Welcome to Jordan Peterson Insights. In today's video, Jordan Peterson talks about the impact of a breakup in a relationship. Also, he shares his views on what sacrifices can we make in order to better ourselves. So watch the video till the end. And don't forget to like and share this video and do subscribe to our channel.
So let's say you're in a long-term intimate relationship and you get betrayed. Okay, so what is it that you see when you see your partner at the moment you know of the betrayal? Well, you see the pre-cosmogonic chaos, and here's why. Well, it rattles your unconscious up because you don't know anything anymore. You don't know what the past was, right? You don't know what it was, and it's supposed to be real, and all of a sudden you don't know what it was, and so you come up with wild ideas about what it might have been and what it represented, and then you don't know what the future is going to be anymore. So then your fantasy fills that space, and you don't know who the hell you're looking at, that's for sure, and you don't know much about human beings, and you certainly don't know anything about yourself. And so all of a sudden, not only is everything in chaos inside your mind, but everything is in chaos in your world. And it actually is, and there's no telling the difference between those two things. You know, and so then you're just shattered. And so then you go talk to a therapist for like 2 years, and you think, well, what happened? What was the reality? And the reality is, because who knows what the reality was, like, but as far as you're concerned, the reality is, I better represent this properly in my head. I better figure out who I was, who that person was, what we did together, and what it meant, because I do not want this to happen again. And so you're healed when you get to the point where you've grasped the bloody moral of the story. What went wrong? And how can I not have that happen again? Because that's the purpose of learning, right? That's the purpose of memory. It's to prepare you for the future. And so you have to pull out of that massive chaos a functional representation that increases your wisdom so that you're not this naive target the next time you enter into a relationship. So at least you can have another relationship without being so traumatized that, you know, you're done. And you know, it can take people years to talk that through, because this landscape of potential opens up when they're betrayed. It's like, well, anything could have been the truth. Well, to sort through that, you have to wander through all that mess, and it's really painful and emotional as well. You have to sort through all that mess to come out with the new you, right? The renewed you. And so, you know, I treat people who have post-traumatic disorder or symptoms of post-traumatic disorder. And so let's say they got post-traumatic stress disorder because, again, because a relationship collapsed on them suddenly, which is quite common. You know, they get betrayed or someone leaves them suddenly, and then they don't know what to do, because, especially if they're conscientious, because then they just tear themselves into pieces trying to figure out what they did wrong to bring about that event. And the reason they're doing that is because they want to retool their perceptions and their actions so that the probability that they'll have the same experience again is minimized. And their mind won't leave them alone until they do it. And no wonder, right? Because if you fall into a big pit and you get really hurt, the first thing you should figure out is how to not fall into big pits anymore. And your mind is set up exactly for that. And so what you do with someone who's having problems like that, so maybe they're waking up at the middle of the night obsessing about what went wrong, is you walk them through it. You do a situational analysis first, because one of the oversimplifications that people make, and this is especially true for conscientious people, is if something bad happened to me, I must have done something to deserve it. Now that's actually a pretty functional idea, because it suggests that there are things about your behavior that you could change that would make the future better. But the problem is that, say if it's the collapse of a relationship and you've been with that person for 8 years or longer, well, you did so many things with them that the idea that you did something wrong pretty much extends to every single thing you ever did with them. And that's, how are you going to fix that? And so that's part of the trauma, actually. The trauma is 80 million snakes all at the same time. It's like, well, forget it. You don't have time to go through all that material. And so partly what you do is with people, and this is what you should do with yourself too, is you do a situational analysis. It's like, don't be assuming necessarily that the thing that happened to you only happened to you because of what you did or didn't do. There's all sorts of factors at play. So one of the things that sometimes I do with clients is if they were in a relationship and I can get some reasonable personality information about both of them, I can point out where they were temperamentally incompatible. You know, like if you're a highly conscientious person and your partner is very, very low in conscientiousness, it's like, well, good luck to you two. How the hell are you ever going to work that out? Because you want everything to be exactly where it's supposed to be, and you're working all the time, and your partner could care less whether things were where they're supposed to be, and they're not going to work. And you can butt heads about that forever. The probability that you're going to shift it, you know, except to some minor degree, is very, very low. And so sometimes you end up with someone with whom you get along very well on one temperamental dimension, and you're an absolute catastrophe on the other four. And the probability that you're going to be able to mediate a huge temperamental difference is extremely low. You wouldn't expect yourself to mediate a huge intellectual difference, right? You're going to make the other person smarter, or maybe you smarter, depending on who you're with. It's like, no, probably not. A bit, maybe. So you do a situational analysis. And so what you're trying to do is to extract out information from your past and your present that will enable you to conduct yourself properly into the future. And so that's another example of the pragmatic element of thought. Well then, let's say you're miserable and unhappy. Okay, here's a cure. Find what's valuable and let it go. So we could say, well, maybe it's a relationship that you have. Maybe it's a relationship with your parents, right? And the relationship is pathological, but you're locked into it, you value it, and no wonder, because it's a relationship with your parents. And you're suffering terribly because of it. Well, what do? Maybe you let it go. It's a sacrifice. And the idea is that, well, that'll clear the future for you. Well, very frequently when people are suffering terribly, not always, because sometimes you just suffer stupidly, blindly, and without recourse, you know. You get cancer and then you die. So we have no idea how to deal with that. But sometimes the reason that you're suffering is because you just won't let go of the thing that's biting you. And you think, well, I can't let go of, and I've had clients like this. I can't stop communicating with my mother, who phones me 3 times a day, every day of my life, and never says anything that isn't unbelievably critical and demeaning. I can't let that go. It's like, well, that's not such a good idea. The funny thing too, often when people let something like that go, it goes away, sorts itself out, and then comes back. So they don't even end up losing it. But unless they're willing to let it go, to sacrifice it, they make no headway whatsoever. And so one of the rules is, if people are impeding your development, you sacrifice your relationship with them, right? It's a very, very rough rule.
Thanks for watching. Do hit the like button and share this video. Also subscribe to our channel for more such content.